On this next to last evening of our class on self-completeness through God, we must make sure that we have covered every phase of the work so that you are left with a clear understanding of a principle. And if we are not clear on that, let us have a period after our meditation and write out any questions that still remain, so that tonight and tomorrow night everything will be clear. And this question, if you are asked to treat for a patient, is there any requirement on the part of the so-called patient, such as meditation or receptivity? The first responsibility is with the practitioner, not with the patient. The master asked, "Do you believe that I can do this?" And he said to the disciples when they failed to heal, that if they had more faith, he did not put the responsibility on the patient, except that the patient was expected, in asking for help, to have faith that they would receive it. Now, I doubt very much if all of those who ask us for help have that much faith, because too many people ask for metaphysical help and are also taking medicines and other forms of materia medica. So if the question were asked them, "Do you believe that I can do this?" in order to be truthful, they would have to say, "No, I don't believe you can do it, I merely hope so." No person who turns to spiritual help while they are using material means has any real belief that they're going to get the help. They have a hope, and as a rule a dim hope, not a very expectant one. The person who believes that they are going to get the help through spiritual means would not at the same time be relying on material means. Nor would they expect spiritual means to help material means, nor would they expect material means to help spiritual means. There is a sharp line of distinction, and we speak often of the failure of metaphysics to bring about its result, and I wonder if sometimes we aren't a little too severe with metaphysics, for the simple reason that metaphysics does not get the degree of faith, even from those who ask for the help, that it should have. You see, materia medica healing in any form, whether it's through medicine, surgery, lights, baths, vitamins, minerals, diet, massages, bone adjustments, all of this is predicated on the belief of a physical body requiring correction. Spiritual help is a complete denial of this. Spiritual help claims that since God, Spirit, is the only creator, that a spiritual being and a spiritual body is the only creation. And it approaches the healing work from that basis. Now, when a person says, I would like spiritual help, and working from the basis that they have a material body that they wish to have spiritually helped, they are not single-minded, they are double-minded. Not intentionally, not willfully, ignorantly, of course, but the effect is the same. The result is the same. It is true that if a person with no knowledge of metaphysics were in a hospital or very ill at home and not getting the result from their medical help, and someone asked them to try metaphysics or to have spiritual help, it is natural that they at that stage could not be expected to understand or have enough faith to rely completely on spiritual means. And the practitioner could give that one help, a matter of, I believe, but help my unbelief, and give that patient some measure of help until the patient said, I have felt something, I can put my faith, my reliance on this. But a true student, one who has been in truth for a year, 2, 3, 5, to be dividing their allegiance between material means and spiritual, is standing in their own light, walking their own progress, not only in understanding, but actually in healing as well. That is one of the reasons for a great deal of the lack of healing. The fact that the patient is depending on material means and spiritual and getting nowhere with either one. The practitioner is in a peculiar position. The practitioner knows that a beginner could receive a healing even though they might still be depending to some extent on their material help because they have not yet been lifted to a place of reliance or confidence. But the practitioner also knows that when a true student comes and asks for help and is at the same time using materia medica, the practitioner doesn't want to say, I won't give it to you, but inwardly they know right well that your chances of getting it are not too good. Not too good. And that you yourself are preventing it. You're dividing your allegiance between the spirit and material means. So every student must come to a place eventually where they choose whether they're going to serve God or Mammon. If they decide on materia medica, then they should have the best materia medica help available, put their whole heart and soul and confidence in it, and every bit of money that's available. On the other hand, if they've come to a place of decision and decided that they will rely on spiritual means, then the thing for them to do is put materia medica behind them, put their heart, soul, and faith into their spiritual treatment or spiritual lesson or spiritual reading and spiritual meditation until their healing takes place. Now, when a practitioner is called upon for help by a student who is really a student of the Spirit, and not dividing their allegiance, then the practitioner does not look to the patient for any cooperation at all. That is, all they ask is that the patient relax and let the practitioner do their work. This means, of course, that the patient is relaxing, is reading, is keeping their mind stayed on God, but not giving themselves treatment for whatever the ailment may be. Once they've turned the case over to the practitioner, let the practitioner carry the responsibility while the patient merely rests, relaxes, reads, meditates, goes to a class or a lecture, whatever they like, or if they so desire, take a vacation, a rest. But always, always, with their full and complete reliance on the spiritual means. Then the practitioner has very little difficulty, because one with God is a majority. One with God is a majority. One practitioner, consciously one with God, can bring out healing without any question of doubt. But there must be a yielding. There must be a giving on the part of the patient so that their confidence and their faith is in the spiritual approach to healing. It has been said over and over again that a grateful patient is a receptive patient to truth. And that is true. Not because of the money that may change hands, but that the money that changes hands is an indication, an outer indication of an inner faith. Nobody pays out money for something they have no faith in. Nobody in their right mind would pay out money for something in which they had no confidence. Nobody could feel grateful for something in which they had no confidence. And so, whether it's the paying of money or some other form of appreciation or gratitude, is an outer sign of an inner confidence in the healing method or in the healing practice. In other words, when a person comes and asks for help and has very little hope, very little confidence in the result, this thought of being grateful, appreciative, rarely enters their mind. Oh yes, if I get healed, I'll be grateful. Of course, that's bargaining with God. That's like tithing 10% to get back 90%. That doesn't work. But when a person comes to a spiritual faith, a spiritual religious teaching, and feels within their own being, this is it. This is what I want. This is what I have confidence in. This is what I know is right. They come in the same spirit of gratitude and appreciation as a person goes to a friend in whom they have confidence, with whom they wish association or communion, with love in their heart, gratefulness, appreciation, friendship, and so forth. And so it is, when any individual has faith in metaphysical or spiritual means of healing, you can tell it in their whole attitude. And when not, you can tell it too. Now, the grateful heart, the appreciative one, isn't the one that's paying money in and of itself. It is the one who in some way indicates their faith and reliance on the spiritual means. Do you follow that? You see the difference between just paying money for money's sake, or the fact that the payment of money is but a token, a symbol of what is going on inside. Well, in the same way, a person who has ever felt a touch of spiritual healing could never have reliance on material means, and their entire thought would be in the direction of more light, more light, more light, more realization, more realization. And so the material sense of existence and the material remedies would fall away from them. Now, it is particularly true in the metaphysical field that the reliance has not been fully placed on spiritual means. In the Christian Science field, it is much more true, or rather there is a greater reliance on spiritual means alone, for the simple reason that 9 practitioners out of 10 wouldn't even give you a treatment if they knew that you were relying in any way on material means. It is contrary to the entire teaching of Christian Science to permit a patient to indulge both materia medica and the Christian Science treatment, and is probably one of the reasons why they get much better results in their healing work than is true outside the Christian Science movement, because even with only the same degree of understanding on the part of the practitioner as another practitioner, they would get better results because of the patient's own complete reliance and faith on spiritual means. And so watch this very carefully. There is apt to be a sense that we are human beings, that we have material bodies, and that we are merely going to God through truth to get some help for our material bodies and our material pocketbooks and our material modes of life. And that isn't true. That's having a double vision. When we come to truth, our main goal is to give up our material mode of living, our material dependencies, our material way of life, in order to enter the kingdom of God. The Master made it very clear that you cannot have both kingdoms. My kingdom is not of this world. And you can't have this world and my kingdom. You can't have mother, brother, father, and sister and my kingdom. You can't have all of these material things of life, material sense of life, and my kingdom. And that is the distinction that everyone must understand. Of course, it doesn't mean that we give up eating, drinking, sleeping, marrying, or any of the other so-called human activities. But it means that we give up the material sense of them and gain the spiritual sense of them. And in giving up the material sense, we give up all reliance on anything that exists in the world of effect. Our complete reliance must be on the world of cause. In other words, when we say, thy grace is sufficient for me, we cannot at the same time go out and take an aspirin tablet. We have made a liar of our own statement that thy grace is sufficient. What we meant was thy grace and an aspirin tablet is sufficient for me. Or thy grace and vitamins is sufficient for me. Or thy grace and something else is sufficient for me. Or thy grace and next month's rent is sufficient for me. In the spiritual way of life, you give up this outer dependence and literally, and I say literally live as though thy grace was sufficient for me, and then let the human world unfold as it will. You'll be satisfied with it, no doubt about that. You'll never be dissatisfied with the spiritual kingdom. You will never be unhealed as long as you have your complete reliance on the spiritual kingdom. But you must come to a place, we must come to a place of utter and complete reliance on thy grace. Now, if we are having financial difficulties and say, thy grace is sufficient for me and I need $100 too, we are double-minded and we are sacrificing our demonstration. If our fault is a physical one and we say, thy grace is sufficient for me, thy law, thy healing grace, the power of thy Spirit is sufficient for me, plus a chiropractic adjustment, you see where that leaves us, don't you? We have made a liar of our own statement. We have contradicted our own faith. We have lost our faith. We have acknowledged to ourselves that actually we never had the faith that we claimed. And that's the truth. And that's the truth. We haven't the faith that we claim until we come to the place of realization that I really mean it, Father. Thy grace is sufficient, and I'm not looking outside my own being. I'm not looking out here to person, place, or thing, circumstance, or condition. I'm not looking out here to a remedy. Why, Admiral Byrd was faced with that situation when he was way out at that point farthest out, I think 200 miles from his men, all alone, with a broken bone of some kind. I've forgotten whether it was his leg or his arm. And he had the alternative of picking up his telegraph key and sending for the doctor and people to come and help him. The other alternative was that he had just discovered that God is mind. And he thought that if God is mind, certainly I know I have a mind, so mind is right here. That means God is right here. Then God should be able to do this healing for me. And so Admiral Byrd lied down and waited for the healing and woke up the next day with it and didn't have to send for his men and experienced his first spiritual healing. And that was a man who was not a truth student, who for the first time in his life had caught a tiny glimpse that God is mind. Well, that is where we are. Thy grace is sufficient for me. And if you call on one of our practitioners for help in that faith, that God's grace is sufficient and that you are relying on the practitioner's realization of that truth, the practitioner's confidence, the practitioner's consciousness of God's presence, then the healing must take place. Sometimes it's quick and sometimes it's slow, but neither the patient nor the practitioner are the determining influence in that. There are sometimes very good reasons for slow healing. And usually the reason is that the patient may gradually come further and further into the orbit of God, so that when the healing does take place, it is more than just a physical change. It is an opening of the spiritual centers, the divine consciousness. But when the patient calls for help, and the practitioner in full faith and confidence gives all of understanding and all of prayer and all of treatment of which they're capable, and the patient themselves is thwarting the result by withdrawing themselves from that spiritual embrace through the use of material means, then you either have no healing, or a much delayed healing, or a healing that has no other consequence than just physical welfare as against physical ill. So the responsibility rests primarily with the practitioner if the patient has fulfilled the price of being a patient. And that price is, do you believe that I can do this thing? Do you have faith as a grain of mustard seed? And if so, the healing must automatically follow. The Master says, leave all and follow me. Leave your nets. You hear that? Leave your nets. You know what the nets were to those fishermen? That was their livelihood. That was their provision for their families. That was the evidence of their love for their family. That was the evidence of their care. That was the only way in which they had for caring and providing for their families. And yet the Master said, leave all that and follow me. Very daring thing to do. Very daring thing to say. Give up the only means you have of supporting your family and follow me. There's something more important in the world, he must have meant, than supporting your family. Or maybe I can show you a higher way of supporting your family. He meant something of a very drastic nature when he said, leave those nets and follow me. I will make you fishers of men. Let us think on that for a little while. Let us think of our position. You see, just for the past few moments, we have been talking about just leaving an aspirin tablet, or a cold tablet, or a flu tablet, or a little food value. Now we are taken back to the shores of Galilee, and we're hearing the Master say to us, leave your method of earning a livelihood. Leave your way of supporting and supplying your family. Leave that material way of showing your love to your families, your care and your support, and follow me. Follow me, the Spirit. And think what would happen if that remark were addressed to us. Think how shocking it is right now to be asked to leave the medicine bottle alone, much more to be asked to leave our work, our incomes, and our present method of supporting a family. You know, whatever occupation we have, whatever it is that we're doing to support our families, have you ever stopped to think that there's a better way and a higher way and a more spiritual way? There is. And evidently the Master intended to show that way to the disciples, because he surely didn't mean that they should desert their families and leave them without support. He certainly never meant to break up those homes and put them on relief or make them dependent on someone else. The Master couldn't function from any such plane of consciousness as to cause loss or lack or limitation to anyone. So when he said, give up your material way of earning a living, and then after the resurrection proved again that when they went back to the material way of fishing, they still couldn't do as well as when he said, cast your nets on the other side, on the spiritual side. Now that's all that is being said to us today in spiritual work. give up those material resources, give up those material remedies, give up those material reliances, and follow me. Follow me, and I will make you fishers of men. I will do that. Let us get this clear. I will make you fishers of men. Let us say that. I will make you fishers of men. Which is more potent, a medicine bottle or I? The dollars in the bank or I? Now, do you know that the whole meaning of this class, all of this week, has been to turn us into the realization of our self-completeness in God, so that we would know that I am more important than dollar bills. I am more important than medicine. I am more important than bone setting. The whole activity of our work here this week has been to reveal our self-completeness in God, so that we could have our complete reliance on me. Follow thou me, and I will make you fishers of men. Follow the I within you, the Father within. Follow this Christ, this principle, this Spirit that abides within your own being, and see if in relinquishing your material mode of living, your material dependencies in life, see if a higher, finer, more abundant, more prosperous, more joyous spiritual life and health and supply, see if that doesn't unfold. And there, you see, is the culmination of all our work. There is the point to which it has led. Can we leave all of our material dependencies? Can we leave the dependency on our families for love, justice, mercy, and expect it only of the Father? You remember that has been brought out all this week in that booklet, Love and Gratitude. Can we turn from expecting justice from the judge and jury and expect justice from the Father within our own being? Can we turn from expecting gratitude, reward, recognition, appreciation from our employers or employees or members of our family, and to say, no longer do I seek my good in you, but in the Father within me. Me. I will follow the I, or me. I will follow now the Spirit within me, and not the personal sense without. And as we come to this place where we either say to the Master, no, go on for a season, I must catch more fish for my family. Go on to the Master while I stay behind here and rely on human beings for recognition and reward and cooperation and gratitude. Go on for a season while I depend on medicines. Or have we reached that point of consciousness that the disciples had reached, when without question they lay down their nets? Matthew left his job as tax collector to follow me, to follow the spiritual impulse of your own being. Remember now, the Master really wasn't asking these men to follow Jesus. He was asking them to follow the teaching that the I within is the Messiah. No one is asking you or your patients or your students to follow Joel Goldsmith or to follow the infinite way. but to follow me. I, the Spirit, at the center of your being. Leave your nets and follow the I. Leave your material modes and means and follow the I, the Spirit within you, the divine Christ, the Son of God, within your own being, and trust it rather than trust something out here in this external realm, or somebody out here in this external realm. Now, we are at that point in this week's class where some of us, at least, are being called upon to answer that call. Some of us have not yet left our fishing net. Some have not yet left their reliance, confidence in material means and in material beings to rely completely on the Father within. Probably that is why we are here in this class. You see, in coming here, you knew in advance that you were going to secure nothing that could be seen, heard, tasted, touched, or smelled. You were going to receive nothing in the external realm, not even a certificate or a title. No, none of those things, nor a license, nor an authorization of any kind. No, you came here knowing full well that you were coming for what the world would call an intangible, something that you could never handle, never see, taste, touch, smell. And what is that you came here knowing in advance that that was what you were seeking? The invisible. That which cannot be seen, that which cannot be heard, and that which cannot be known. And yet you came here to see and hear and know. To see that which cannot be seen, to hear that which cannot be heard, to know that which cannot be known. And so I say to you that you must not be surprised if I say to you, now, in turn, your complete reliance must be on what you found here. Nothing. He hangeth the world on nothing. And so, as you go forth from this class, you must really realize that what you came to get was nothing, and you're going away with it. Yes, you're going to get just what you came here for. Nothing that you will ever see or hear or taste or touch or smell. But of this I'm sure, that you feel it and see it and hear it and know it, even though there isn't any it to see and hear and feel and taste and know. Oh, yes. Because that is the lesson of our self-completeness in God, in the invisible power, not the visible. We are here to learn of an invisible power, of, to the world, an unknown power. What separated not only the disciples, but the followers of the Master from the other Hebrews? Only the fact that the other Hebrews couldn't see, hear, taste, touch, or smell what it was that the disciples and the Hebrew Christians, Jewish Christians, were following. It was foolishness to them. Foolishness. How can you follow something that nobody knows anything about? And then these followers of the Master would smile, not know anything about it. Oh, we know all about it. Well, what is it? Where is it? Let me see it. Let me touch it. No, it's a glint in the eye. Oh, no, that's foolishness. That's foolishness. Yet that was the truth. That was the truth. They saw something in the Master. They felt something in the Master. They felt something in their association with him that satisfied, so that they too could say, oh, we do not live by bread alone. We are receiving an inner grace, an inner meat, inner wine, inner water. And they knew what the Master meant when he said, eat my body, drink my blood. They knew right well that he wasn't preaching cannibalism. Oh, yes. They knew what the others could never understand. And so it is, yes, I'm thinking of the story of the cup, the glass that the master drank from, that was embodied in that chalice. And in his book, Mr. Costain says that when a person of spiritual vision came into the darkened room where that glass was, they saw a light all around the rim of the glass. But the other Hebrews, those of material sense, who were not followers of the Master, who had not become Christians, when they came in, they saw an ordinary drinking glass. And they wondered why so much fuss was being made about it, and so many people were willing to die for it. Well, in the same way, we have called attention to the fact that although the Master walked the earth after the crucifixion, that according to testimony, only about 500 people saw him. Out of all the thousands that walked those roads, out of all the thousands in Jerusalem, 500 saw him. Those 500 saw the invisible and the intangible, the human sense. They saw that which human beings can never see. I see we who have touched, even this hem of the Master's robe of the Spirit, when we are ill, we require nothing that the world can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. We see and feel something in a spiritual treatment that has more power to it than all of the medicines ever made. In the same way, when the world is threatened with atomic bombs, those who have tasted one drop of spiritual life and love and truth, they're not out looking for bomb shelters or for cabins up in Arkansas. No, because they feel an invisible security, an invisible safety. We call that the safety and security in God. That's part of our self-completeness in God, that we walk around in an eternal bomb shelter all the time. An eternal bomb shelter surrounds us. What is that? Now just think of the 91st Psalm. Those who dwell in the secret place of the Most High. Where is the secret place of the Most High? Is there such a place? Is it a place at all? Consciousness. Those who live in the consciousness of God's presence, none of these evils shall come nigh their dwelling place. Those who live in the awareness of God's presence. Then awareness must be more powerful than lions and adders and all of the ills of human experience. An awareness must be greater than all of the evils of the world. Think of that. Now that is the message of the infinite way. And that is the message, actually, of any spiritual teaching. Any spiritual teaching is a revelation that a state of spiritual awareness of God's consciousness is greater protection than a bomb shelter, that an awareness of God's presence is a greater remedial agency than medicines and manipulations and surgery. It's a strange thing, but it's true, that at this period of our experience, we are being told to leave our nets, leave our material means of sustenance, our material means of maintenance, our material means of livelihood, our material means of living. Think of it. We are told to leave our material means of living and follow what? The secret place of the Most High. Follow me. In other words, let me, the I, be your fish, your load, and your protection, and your healing agency. When the Master healed, he used no remedies. It was a complete reliance on me. Do you believe that I can do this thing? Oh, if you had faith as a grain of mustard seed, this whole mountain would disappear. Yes, not only a fever, not only a cold, this whole mountain, not just a little lump, this whole mountain would disappear. In what? In faith, in me, in the invisible, in the sense, the intangible, to that which you can never handle with the external senses. Every move that the Master made throughout his 3 years of ministry was a lesson in a complete reliance on that which the world knows not of. Do you remember the 3 temptations? Turn the stone into bread? No, we don't live by bread. We live by the Word of God. Do you see that? All the way through his ministry. Shall we go to the city and get you some meat? No, I have meat that ye know not of. I can give you water, living waters. Where from? You have no bucket to draw it with. I don't need a bucket. The water I'm talking about is invisible. You can't see it, hear it, taste it, touch it, or smell it. How do we know it exists? How can we have confidence in it? Ah, there comes the secret. There comes the division. If you cannot feel an inner rightness about this message, if you cannot feel an inner confidence in a medicine that you will never see, hear, taste, touch, or smell, if you cannot have a complete faith and confidence in me, in the I within your being, if you cannot accept this statement that I am come that ye might be fulfilled and completely rely on I, say it, I. If you cannot come to a place where you believe that I am come that ye might be fulfilled medically, mentally, morally, financially, then the thing to do is leave this work for a season. Go back to the material, medical world until a greater sense of awareness comes in, because you'll only tear yourself between the two. A double-minded man cannot get anywhere, and he only brings confusion upon himself. Either feel the love and feel the confidence in a divine power within you, and then be willing, with faith, to prove it and see it come through into expression, or leave it for a season, come back to it again at another time when something comes up in life to rouse that faith. You see, that is the answer to the whole of the spiritual life. The Master, it is true, walked up and down the shores of Galilee, walked up and down the Holy Land all the way through, but actually he didn't proselyte. Actually, he didn't make speeches to whip anybody up into coming and believing in him. So far as the records show, he walked the Holy Lands, He sat in the mountains and talked to the multitudes that gathered there. I don't believe he sent for them. He just talked to those who gathered. And I'm sure that in those multitudes there must have been some to ridicule, to doubt, to have unbelief, to be unable to grasp the vision, like Nicodemus. There are probably millions of Nicodemuses in the world, and for them, this work has no appeal. This work has appeal only for those who respond with some measure of love, trust, confidence. I don't know whether it was today or yesterday that I brought out here that a center like this stands as a testimony to the love and devotion to God of somebody or other. Usually it's the leader, and usually the leader finds one or two or three to share in that devotion to some extent, seldom to the same extent as the leader. The leader puts their whole life and soul and mind and body into it. Why? Because of an edifice? Hardly. To make a living? I doubt it. It is that intense recognition of the Christ and a desire to impart to others that which can't be imparted, that which has to be seen, heard by the individual themselves. But that love and that desire comes, and that love fills a place, and then those are drawn to it who have some measure of capacity to discern the Christ. Who do men say that I am? O Hebrew prophet resurrected. Whom do ye say that I am? Thou art the Christ. Ah, yes. The moment you have enough spiritual vision in you to say, yes, this center stands for the Christ or truth or love, or this leader is expressing a divine consciousness of love, an intangible, in other words, then you are ready for the divine unfoldment of the Christ in you. I think back on a Thanksgiving service when I was reading in Riker Island Prison in New York in the Christian Science services. And in the morning that one religious group had met, and there was fruit and candies given out and nuts, and then the next religious group met and something else was to be given out, and we were the third group, and the young man who went through the prison cells and so forth announcing that it was time for Christian Science services, but they don't give any candy and fruit. Well, it's true, we didn't give any candy and fruit, but our chapel was packed jam full all the way to the back of the room, because we were giving something, but something that you couldn't eat with the teeth, with the mouth. You couldn't digest with the digestive organs. But evidently there were enough in that prison who knew that we were giving wine and water and bread and meat, even though it was invisible. Well, of course, you who come to this center, you also don't get banquets and material loaves and fishes, and that isn't what you come here for, and you don't get it. You come because of an invisible thing that you feel, an invisible touch that you sense, and you understand that to be the Christ. But now the question comes whether or not that registers sufficiently within your being to say, but that must be my sole reliance. At one point or another, I must leave my nets. I must give up every material approach to life and see the entire picture from a spiritual standpoint, so that in following the Master, I leave my aspirin bottles behind and say, I believe that I am come that ye might be fulfilled. And so you turn in faith and confidence and hope through an inner conviction, not because somebody sits up here and tells it to you. Nobody can give you faith. That's something that springs up within you. And when it does, then you say, henceforth my faith is not in the visible realm, but in the eye of my being. Not only the eye of my practitioner, not only the eye of my leader. Oh, no. I am come within you that ye might be fulfilled. And as your faith and hope grows in the infinite invisible, as you come now to appreciate those statements, he that is within me is greater than he that is in the world. He performeth that which is given me to do. And you commence to understand this reliance on a completely invisible thing. So invisible that if the rest of the world knew what you were relying on, it might think you crazy. It would. It would. It does. It does. Yes, show them the tangible. Show them the dollar bills. Show them the surgery and their faith, and they think that's common sense. But the Hebrews who followed the Master didn't have common sense. It wasn't common sense to leave their fishes, to leave off fishing, to follow him. It wasn't common sense to answer yes when he said, do you have faith to believe that I can raise you from the dead? Do you have faith to believe that I can restore these limbs from their paralysis? Do you see that? It isn't common sense. It's an uncommon sense. It's a divine wisdom that enables a person to say, yes, I have left all to follow the invisible, the Christ, the Master within me. I have left all to follow the vision that the man in the street has never seen and will never see. Think of the faith that it took on the part of the Christians who allowed themselves to be thrown into lions' cages, lions' arenas. You know, they must have been seeing an immortal life beyond what they knew was to be their immediate death. If they hadn't had that vision, they could never have taken that kind of punishment. Think of John in prison, Peter in prison, and singing. They must have seen something beyond the terrors of a prison. They must have seen something in the invisible realm that held out a greater hope and a greater promise than even freedom. People have given up their freedom for this vision. People have given up their human sense of life. As a matter of fact, the Master so clearly said, if you don't lose your life, you won't find it. Now remember, your physical sense of life may be dependent on medicines or surgery or adjustments or vitamins, but you'll never find your spiritual sense of life while you are leaning on that material prop. Too many people have tried it and failed. Too many people have said, I've tried Christian Science, I wrote Silent Unity, but I didn't get any benefit. I'd like to ask 99% of them how much faith they actually had in those treatments and what material remedies they gave up in order to place their faith in those spiritual means. Because I know, after all these years, I know of too many people who have been healed in Christian Science, in unity, through spiritual leaders and teachers out in the world of unorganized spiritual religious activities. I know of too many such healings to doubt the efficacy of it. And so when I hear of lack of healing, I'm more apt to doubt the faith and single-mindedness of those who have turned. Well, that doesn't mean that there aren't some who have given their entire faith and reliance and confidence and have not yet made their demonstration. That is true. There are some who have thrown their entire weight on the side of the spiritual scale and for some reason have not yet had the full measure of their release. But to them I can only say this: be patient. Be patient. Let the Christ work in you and through you to your final and complete redemption, and it will come about. Leave your nets. Stop this fishing for material fish and material remedies and material ways of earning a livelihood, and turn only to one statement in all of his teaching. Only to one statement. If you want to leave it all the rest alone, turn only to one: I am come, that you might be fulfilled. Trust that I at the center of your being. Cling to that one thing, or the equivalent of it: thy grace, the grace of God in me, is sufficient for me. Cling steadfastly, wholeheartedly to thy grace is sufficient for me. Thy grace. Nothing out here, just thy grace. It'll come. It can't fail. It'll come, and it'll be in time. We'll never lose out, because the Spirit is the true reality of being. All this material sense of existence is only our false sense, only our limited view of the great glories that are in store for us when we've caught that inner vision that we can perceive the Christ where others only see Jesus. When we can perceive the Spirit where others only see matter. And as we catch one little grain of it and rely on it, the second grain will come, and the third, and the fourth, and the fifth, and it may be a slow process. It may be a slow process. It was very slow with me, and it's probably slow with you, but it's a very sure one, and it's a wonderful one when we achieve it. Now let us have a little vacation for a while.